Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And of course, we've covered all the trials and tribulations that the SNP has had over recent weeks and months. It's a never-ending stream of it. Well, Humza Yousaf is not the leader. He's the man who's got the title of leader, but he is no leader in any way, shape or form. And the party is collapsing around his ears. Their claim of 72,000 members, I think now, would be optimistic. There'll be many who have let their memberships lapse, and there'll be some that will actively have cancelled them. Kate Forbes does not want to be the leader of a ruined party. It may be too late, but that's what she's trying to save. And so she's written to the members, begging them to stay and begging others who've left to come back. She knows that she will soon be the new leader. She will not be aligned with the old regime. They will have to go. All of them, every single one of them will have to be cleared out like the Aegean stables. The levels of mistrust, of corruption, of perceived filth, basically, will have to go. She will take over. She will be the new broom sweeping clean. And of course, being one of the young Turks, she will not be aligned with that old guard. And so she has a chance of saving the SNP. It needs a change of direction. It needs to drop the obsession with independence. Independence is not achievable at the moment. She knows that, and she's prepared to fight on to do something about the economy, to do something about the moral turpitude that is resounding across the whole of the SNP at the moment, where they seem to be pushing men's rights above women's rights at every available stage. She will fight that as well. I think she's got common sense. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a supporter of the SNP, as you probably know. But I think if you're going to have someone who's in charge and who is going to have to be the leader of the party and thus the First Minister for the next 2.5 years or so, at least have someone who is more considerate and caring about things like the cost of living crisis, about the unemployment situation, the economy, the NHS, rather than being singly obsessed with independence and gender identity. And I think she is there. I think she is possibly, I think she's possibly the only person who can save the SNP. Without her becoming leader, the SNP is finished. So there's an article here where she has written to the members, urging them to stay, urging them to help her save the party. And I think she's right. But we'll have a look at this article and see what she's saying and what she's doing. But undoubtedly, I think the SNP is finished without her. It's up to the party members. Anyway, here goes. So here's the article. Kate Forbes writes plea to SNP members urging them not to quit. It is almost impossible for me to describe... This is her words. Now, this is the letter that she's written. It is almost impossible for me to describe the events of the last few weeks. The shock, confusion and hurt is echoed by almost every member and supporter I've met. Members of 50 years and members of 5 months are united by the confusion as to what is happening. Every few days, a new revelation renews the sense of astonishment. My darling, it's not every few days, it's several times every day. The impact is reverberating through the party. I spoke to one local member who told me she'd sacrificially donated to the party for decades as part of her contribution to independence. Another branch officer argued he'd always followed due process so as to never bring the party into disrepute. Both feel a sense of loss and bewilderment. Whatever unfolds in the coming weeks, discussion must quickly turn to how we move forward as a party and as a movement, and that is what I wish to focus on here. Now, she's writing this letter. Now, we'll continue with her letter, but she's writing this. I think she is putting out her stall, and I don't blame her. She's writing to these people. She's begging them to stay. She's saying whatever's happened has happened because of the previous regime. And I think that she's right about this continual sort of new breaking thing, something else. It can't go on forever. But I think there's a lot more to come. And then that line that, that it needs to be sort of, looked at, and she wants to move forward into the future. And I get that. And she wants to move forward as leader, which I also understand. And so this is basically her pitch. And I think it's a good pitch because I think we all agree. I think we can all agree that Humza Yousaf is already sort of 2 weeks into the job. he's done. He is finished. He can no longer maintain the leadership of the party. He's so tied up with the previous regime. Continuity. He pushed himself forward as the continuity candidate. Is he going to continue with the bribery, the corruption, the criminality? We have to know. And I think that continuity drive that he pushed has just contributed to his early retirement from politics. Anyway, getting back to her letter. To do that, she continues, firstly, we must see decisive and immediate action on internal matters. That could start with a report into the auditor's resignation, followed by other actions to boost transparency. After all, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Secondly, we must recall that the party achieved historic success on the strength and trust of our members. And finally, we must govern in such a way as demonstrates that the party's core purpose of independence is bigger than any individual, including the leader. I want to explore each of these 3 steps in this week's column. Now, that line about the party being bigger than the leader, I think that needs to be addressed. For so long, the party was the leader. It was Alex Salmond. He was the face of the party. And then, of course, there was Sturgeon. Now, the problem, obviously, with the Sturgeons is that they were a pair of narcissists. They weren't even true to themselves or each other. A lavender marriage, as we know. It was very telling the other day when she was doing that interview that the old wedding band, the finger with the wedding band was stuffed permanently into her pocket. It looked very awkward. The stance did not look natural. So you can guarantee that there was no wedding ring on that finger. The marriage is over. Marriage, as it was, not really a marriage, was it? Marriage in name only. It was a marriage of convenience. But that is now done. That awkward stance sort of confirmed that. But for so long, the party was the leader. And the party needs to not be the leader. And I think Kate is right in suggesting that they need to move on. Need to move away from that sort of single identifiable face of the party. Have a true cabinet-led party. And it's the only way you're going to save the SNP. And have it filled with people who are not foaming at the mouth, rabid, single-issue politicians. That's the only other thing that will save the party. Anyway, we'll go back in and see what she continues to say. Right. I still remember the first time I campaigned for the SNP. It was a chilly evening in 2007, and as I shoved a crumpled leaflet through another unyielding letterbox, I confessed to regretting how easily I'd been persuaded by local activists to help with a leaflet run. I was 17 years old. Oh, I've been there, my darling. I have stood for local elections. I was up and pushing things through doors, and it's cold and it's wet and it's miserable. And the people you're putting the doors through, most of them are never going to vote for you. So yeah, I do understand that. I decided to attend my local SNP branch the week before for the first time. I was greeted by a small, weary band of elderly members in a damp, fusty side room of the local village hall. Somewhat surprised by the improbability of fame, glory or success in such a setting, I settled down to listen. If my enthusiasm was eroded by the dull agenda that night, the opposite was true for these local branch members. They were ecstatic to see somebody new, because it was an old organisation. It's an old, dying organisation filled with old, single-minded, unyielding, unchanging people. I know, I'm 56, my brain is wood now. I have the views on the world, and it's very difficult to change them. I understand scientific process. If something comes along and it's proved to me, I of course listen and I will change. But in most things, I am unyielding. And so she continues, before I left that evening, I was issued with a bundle of leaflets, a list of addresses, and a strict deadline by which they must be delivered. And that is how I found myself trudging around a small town on a chilly evening, and not for the last time. Since those days, our party has come far, propelled to power through the hard work of activists and the faith and trust of the Scottish people. We won multiple elections, with majorities in council chambers, the Scottish Parliament and Scottish seats at Westminster. Our membership ballooned and we earned the right to a referendum and maintained the trust of the Scottish people. Yes, you earned your referendum. You earned it and you lost it. Because most people in Scotland don't want independence. And yet you still push this. Because, who knows? Obsession. I remember seeing friends and family members who'd previously dismissed the SNP as irrelevant, choosing to vote for local SNP representatives for the first time. That choice was an act of faith. Well, that faith has been somewhat misplaced, I suspect. Faith in a party and trust in its mission to do right by the Scottish people. We campaigned on our record in government. I wouldn't rely on that in future. Your record in government now is pretty damn bad. Anyway, carrying on, our competent team. Again, another historical thing. No competency in the team at the moment. And our vision of a better future. Well, the only vision of a better future now is if the SNP are no longer in charge. Record, team, vision. A heady combination. And historically inaccurate. And it's certainly inaccurate now. Anyway, SNP branches, she said, have always largely comprised of a few hardy souls who lived in hope and worked their socks off. They knew failure and setbacks and broken dreams, but the only thing that was worn out was their shoe leather. There was no glory, little fame and minimal success in the early days. And that, my darling, is the future for most activists in the SNP going forward. They've got to have to work out what party they're going to join. She says, and so my plea to fellow members is this. Stay the course. As Gale Force winds batter the ship, this is a call for all hands on deck. If you are a party member thinking of resigning, please don't. If you're scunnered at what is unfolding, please stay. If you've recently left the party, as 50,000 people reportedly have in recent years, think of rejoining. I'm not going to go through the rest of it. Basically, she is begging people who are still members but thinking of leaving to stay, and those who have left to come back. But I think she's hopeful. I'll give her a due. I mean, to be fair, she's going forward with hope in her heart and a song on her lips. And she's trying to put a very good spin on what is an awful, awful situation. She's got to hope it works. Because if she can bring them people back, if she can retain the ones that are thinking of leaving, she will get their votes. She is so close and was so close at the last election that everyone she brings back will vote for her. She will be the next leader. What she's got to do now is concentrate on pushing her own brand, the Kate Forbes brand, highlighting it within the party now, within the SNP, highlighting it there. And getting others in the party to call for another election or to call for Humza Yousaf to go. She cannot do that. Anyone will tell you that if she calls for the election, she won't win the election. It's called the Heseltine principle. But what you have to do is get someone else to be the stalking horse, someone else to lead the cavalry, and then you come in and mop up the survivors after the battle. And so somebody there should call for this. Somebody senior needs to call for Humza Yousaf to go, needs to say that there needs to be a vote of confidence and something like that, and have the membership have a vote of confidence. He'll be out, she'll be in, and she is the only person in the SNP who can possibly save it. Because without her, it's done. I mean, it doesn't bother me if it goes, but it's for the people within the party. They've got to see that. Anyway, this should be going on too long. I shall come up and round off. I think it's amusing that the person who lost the leadership election is seen more of a leader than the one who won it. She's certainly making her stance and making her pitch. And I think people respect her and what she's saying more than what he's saying and doing. But then she hasn't got a history of failure, which also helps. But being young, and this is, I think is the only thing that's going to work, is that she's relatively young. I know they're both actually of the sort of similar ages, but he has tied himself to that old guard, and that old guard now is seen as toxic. And so, even though he's of that younger generation, he is still that toxic side of the party, where she's coming across, oh, look at me, young, fresh, clean, not tainted by the associations of the other side. And I think is, genuinely the only person I think that's in the party that's actually electable as a leader. But I think also the one that would appeal to not necessarily SNP voters, non-SNP voters. I think if she was leading, she could pull voters away from other parties. Not obviously not the strongly held belief ones, but the floating voters that may have been, given the problem with the SNP, I think I might vote Labour this time. If she came back, I think she would pull them, and I think she is the only one who could do it. Ash Regan, no, not a chance on earth. And the other thing, of course, is Kate Forbes is already sort of that close to winning it anyway. So I think she's undoubtedly the next leader. The question we have now is how long? Will it be next week? Will it be next month? Or will it be after the next Holyrood elections? I don't think it matters. She will be leader. Sooner rather than later, I suspect. I honestly don't see Humza Yousaf lasting too much longer. I'm not going to make a prediction, but, it's not going to be long. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and until next time, stay safe, stay well, keep watching the SNP because things are always happening, and goodbye.